My name is Robert Jenkins, and I'm UNICEF's Global Director of Education, and I'm here with Jaime Saavedra, the Global Director of Education for the World Bank, and Stefania Giannini, UNESCO's Assistant Director General for Education. And together, we're sending a message about the urgency of reopening schools and doing everything we can to minimize the predicted long-term negative impacts of COVID-19 on children and the education sector. Working across our three organizations to support governments, we are helping to accelerate progress in the recovery of schools to benefit every child and young person.
As we know, the COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted education around the world at a scale never seen before. According to UNESCO, close to 700 million students are still affected by full or partial school closures. While many countries have reopened schools for at least partial in-person instruction, COVID-19 continues to cause recurring closures and lockdowns. Getting all children back into schools is just the beginning of the steps to recovery. From our joint service, we know much more support is needed to address the impact of school closures on students' learning, health, and well-being.
The disruption of societies and economies caused by the COVID-19 pandemic is aggravating the already existing global education crisis and impacting education in unprecedented ways. Before the outbreak of the pandemic, the world was already living a learning crisis. Learning poverty now can be rising by 10 points or even more if school closures are extended. But there is hope because we have learned from the crisis. We have learned that technology, which could be our greatest ally, is still way behind in being available to millions of children and young people. We have learned that teachers, who are the ones who can make technology a powerful tool for learning, are the most fundamental element in the education process and need society's support. And we have learned that parents can make a huge impact on their children's educational advancement.
COVID-19 has affected many students globally, but the most vulnerable children and youth have borne the brunt of school closures. Not only have they been cut off from learning, they've been separated from peer and teacher support and critical services such as psychosocial support and nutrition services often offered at school. They may also have been exposed to violence, neglect, or exploitation. These children are depending on us to get these critical next steps right. Schools must reopen, and the full range of support services must be offered to students when they walk through those doors, including remedial and catch-up learning. Otherwise, as many of you have seen in different countries, the most vulnerable children will never recover from this education crisis and may not return to their learning at all. This is why we have launched our joint mission, Recovering Education 2021.
The mission's three priorities reflect those identified by ministers at the Global Education Meeting that we organized in October 2020. We are coming together to support the governments to, first, implement targeted programs to bring all children back to school and ensure their comprehensive needs are met. Second, conduct formative assessments and remedial programs to help children catch up on lost learning. Third, prepare teachers to address learning losses and incorporate digital technology into their teaching.
As the situation evolves, we need to continue doing comparative analysis using the joint surveys that our teams are generating so that countries can learn from each other's challenges and successes. Tools such as the Reopening Schools Policy Action Notes can support country efforts to bring children back to school, re-engage in the learning process, and making up for the lost time. And we will continue supporting the critical task of generating learning data so that teachers, principals, and systems have the information they need regarding where students are in terms of learning to help them improve the effectiveness of remedial, hybrid, and in-person instruction.
To teachers and parents around the world, we thank you all for your efforts to support the continuity of learning throughout the pandemic and now during the recovery. We urge governments to keep working with us to implement this mission, and we will continue to do everything we can to help at this critical moment. Together, we can make the reopening and recovery in schools better for every child and ensure the most vulnerable are not left even further behind.